Come on.
There was a time when, simply as Frasier raised his voice on the radio, Niles entered the room, or Martin sat down in his familiar chair, the audience knew the laughter was about to begin. But the camera cannot keep people still forever. Behind those characters were actors who continued to live, change, seek new roles, experience success, partings, and irreversible losses. In 2026, let's meet the cast of Frasier again and discover what happened after they left Seattle. If you ever loved this show, please comment, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. An audition in 1993 completely changed the direction of Jane Leeves' career in American television. Before that, the role of Daphne Moon was not certain to be hers, and Cynthia Nixon was also considered. Kelsey Grammer was initially not entirely convinced by the idea of casting an English actress, but the reaction after the reading with Leeves was completely different. From there, Daphne stepped into Frasier's apartment as the physical therapist caring for Martin Crane, bringing a natural comedic touch, a distinctive accent, and a host of unpredictable stories about her family in Manchester.
You're Daphne?
Why, yes, I am.
Went a little more. Not quite so. You're Daphne?
What made Daphne last longer than a comedic supporting character was how she changed over time. In the early seasons, she primarily served as a counterweight to Frasier and Niles' fastidious lifestyle. But as the feelings between Daphne and Niles developed, the character began to have more depth, and her position in the Crane family changed completely. She was no longer just someone working in the house, but became a part of that very family. Leeves' performance was recognized with an Emmy nomination in 1998.
Have you slathered my body with oil?
Oh, just give me a hand.
Fine. There we go. There we go. All right.
What's going on in here?
Leaving the Seattle apartment did not mean Jane Leeves left television. After Frasier ended, she continued to find success as Joy Scroggs in Hot in Cleveland, then shifted to a more serious tone as Dr. Kit Voss in The Resident. By 2026, Leeves is 65 years old. She does not appear in the new version of Frasier, but Daphne Moon remains the name most closely tied to her career. A role that once started with hesitation ultimately became a legacy spanning over 3 decades. Before Seattle, or KACL, became part of Frasier Crane's life, there was Diane Chambers. In Cheers, Shelley Long created an intelligent, idealistic, ambitious, yet complex character enough to make those around her constantly adjust to her.
I'd love to.
This is the... You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take you to future best...
Diane's success made Long one of the most prominent faces of 1980s American sitcoms and earned her an Emmy. Therefore, although Diane appeared only a few times in Frasier, her shadow was still present in the protagonist's romantic past.
Come on.
The reunion between Diane and Frasier many years later was not built just to evoke memories of Cheers. It showed that old feelings had not truly disappeared. Shelley Long brought back almost intact the personality that made Diane famous: confident, sophisticated, intelligent, and sometimes confusing to others. Frasier, who always believed he understood human emotions, had to face a chapter of his life that he himself had not fully processed. That return helped Long receive another Emmy nomination in 1996.
Jan, a real friend likes you for who you are, not what's on your face. When on you, you're not only judging yourself, you're judging your friends for judging you, and that would be using...
Shelley Long's career after Cheers did not continue at as dense a pace as before, but she continuously appeared in many notable projects. The Brady Bunch movie brought her back to the big screen, while Modern Family introduced Long to a new generation of audiences through the role of Dee Dee Pritchett. In 2026, she is 76 years old and maintains a fairly private public life. Nevertheless, Diane Chambers remains a role hard to separate from Shelley Long's name and is an important part of the story that created Frasier Crane. Only a few episodes before, Frasier said goodbye to the audience, an unexpected matchmaker became the reason Frasier considered changing his entire life. Charlotte Connor initially appeared with a simple mission to find him a suitable partner. But after a series of dates that didn't go as expected, it was Charlotte who became the person he wanted to be with. Laura Linney did not make her a perfect model, but created a realistic, independent woman, confident enough not to be too easily impressed by Frasier's elegance or intellect. Chicago then became the final test for a man who always wanted to know the outcome before making a decision. When Charlotte moved away, Frasier had to choose between a familiar life and a future with no guarantees. The final episode led the audience to believe he was on his way to San Francisco to start a new job before revealing the plane actually landed in Chicago. After 11 seasons of analyzing every choice, Frasier finally did the opposite of his habit. He bet on hope. In Laura Linney's massive career, Charlotte only occupied a very short time, but left a special mark.
And do women not live politics, John Adams? I find no coffee, no sugar, no pins, no meat. Am I?
This guest role helped her win an Emmy in 2004, while the following years continued to see Linney succeed with John Adams, The Big C, Ozark, and many stage works. At age 62 in 2026, she continues to be active. Charlotte may not be Linney's biggest role, but to Frasier, she was the one who appeared at the last minute and made the main character dare to choose a completely new direction. Not every memorable face in Frasier needed a multi-season love story or a fixed chair in the Crane apartment. Kirby Gardner appeared in only 6 episodes, but Brian Klugman turned this aimless young man into a fairly memorable minor character. Kirby was the son of Lana Gardner, whom Frasier had admired since high school.
Hey, Dr. Crane. What are you doing? You're eating books. Relax, bro. I'm wearing the gloves.
When Frasier agreed to help him study, he had to step out of his world of opera, wine, and intellectual debates to communicate with a young person with a completely different view of life.
Dude, wait until the party gets going a little. Good thinking. I'll just see what your mother's doing.
Kirby's interest lay in the fact that he didn't try to prove he was special. Initially, Frasier easily saw him as a lazy and unambitious young man, but the mentoring process made him realize that first impressions don't tell the full story of a person's potential. The segments between them thus gave Frasier a different role, not the psychiatrist on the radio or the brother who likes to argue with Niles, but an adult who must learn to be patient with the younger generation. For a character who appeared only briefly, Kirby performed that task quite well. Brian Klugman did not later limit himself to acting. He appeared in Cloverfield House, Mad Men, Castle Psych, and played Dr. Oliver Wells in many episodes of Bones. Along with standing in front of the camera, Klugman and Lee Sternthal participated in developing the story for Tron Legacy. In 2012, the two continued as co-writers and co-directors of The Words, with a cast including Bradley Cooper, Zoe Saldana, and Jeremy Irons. From a sitcom supporting actor, Klugman gradually expanded his work into writing and directing. Brian Klugman is 50 years old for most of 2026 and turns 51 in September. Compared to Jane Leeves or Laura Linney, he appears less in major entertainment headlines, and his career is not tied to an iconic character. But that is a very familiar type of journey in Hollywood, continuing to work through many different positions, sometimes in front of the camera, sometimes behind it. Kirby was just a small chapter of Frasier, and for Klugman, it was one of many steps on a creative path spanning from the early 1990s to the present. Kirby may have appeared in only a few episodes, But do you think this character deserves to be remembered more in the world of Frasier? Please share your favorite minor character in the comments section. If you enjoy stories looking back at the cast and their journey after the show, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Sherry Dempsey stepped into Martin Crane's life like a completely different breath of air from the fastidious world of Frasier and Niles. She was open, fun-loving, spoke naturally, and didn't care if she fit the two brothers' standards of elegance. That very ease made Martin find joy after years of living with memories of his deceased wife. Marcia Mason appeared in only a few episodes in the late 1990s, but made Sherry one of Martin's most memorable relationships and received an Emmy nomination for the role.
It's unconscious. Daphne, naturally you're threatened by this. You feel...
I've been feeling a bit unwanted lately.
Well, a night without your services will have them sing.
When she came to Frasier, Mason actually already had a major film career behind her. She had received 4 Oscar nominations for Best Actress for Cinderella Liberty, The Goodbye Girl Chapter 2, and Only When I Laugh, while also winning 2 Golden Globes. Thus, Sherry was just a small chapter in a professional journey spanning many decades. After Frasier, Mason still appeared in series such as The Middle, Grace and Frankie, The Good Wife, and Madam Secretary. She also spent increasingly more time on stage, where live performance and directing became a new focus. By 2026, Marcia Mason is 84 years old, but has not yet completely retired. In 2025, she appeared in the off-Broadway play My First Ex-Husband.
Do you make war movies?
War movies?
Yeah.
No, I never made a war movie. Though there's probably a lot of great...
Then continued as a stage director in 2026. Looking back, Sherry Dempsey may have only appeared briefly in Frasier, but the character gave Martin a special time, an opportunity to love and enjoy life once more. And behind Sherry was an actress who went from the heights of 1970s cinema to the 21st century stage, maintaining a career for over half a century without depending on a single role. Frasier once kept Lana Gardner in his memory as the dream girl from high school until they met again many years later. The woman in front of him now was strong, blunt, sometimes hot-tempered, and juggling many family responsibilities.
How's things? Are you married now?
No. I was, but I'm not now.
Jean Smart turned the distance between memory and reality into the most attractive point of the character. Lana didn't need to try to impress Frasier, and that was exactly what made him return to insecurities thought to have vanished since youth. This guest role became one of the memorable parts of Frasier and brought Smart 2 Emmys.
Hi, Charlene.
Haven't seen you in ages.
Yeah, I know it. Is Anthony around?
You just missed him.
Oh, I forgot to give him one of the chords that goes with my...
But Lana was just a milestone in Jean Smart's continuously changing career. Before Frasier, she was already familiar to audiences through Designing Women. Afterwards, Smart continuously tried different types of characters in 24, Samantha Who, Fargo, Watchmen, and Mayor of Easttown. With Hacks, her career entered a new prominent phase as comedian Deborah Vance. Instead of just being remembered as a television star of an era, Smart became one of the most highly regarded actresses in the later stage of her career, continuing to receive major awards in her 70s. Behind that success were also profound changes in her private life. Richard Gilliland, the husband Smart met while both were in Designing Women, passed away in 2021. She continued to work in the following years, both maintaining Hacks and returning to Broadway with Call Me Izzy in 2025. By 2026, Jean Smart is 74 years old and remains in one of the strongest phases of her career. Lana Gardner once forced Frasier to look back at an idealized memory. Smart's real-life journey shows that success doesn't necessarily peak when young. Sometimes the most notable chapter comes very late. Each time Simon Moon appeared, the order Frasier tried to maintain was almost immediately tested. Daphne's brother was carefree, irresponsible, liked to stay longer than expected, and often made his sister resolve the consequences for him. However, Simon was not just brought in to cause trouble. Through him, the audience first saw more clearly the family environment in which Daphne grew up, thereby understanding why she was so patient and adaptable. Anthony LaPaglia appeared in only 8 episodes, but turned this supporting role into a memorable enough face for him to win a Primetime Emmy for Guest Actor. Outside of Frasier LaPaglia's image was much more serious than Simon. He won a Tony on Broadway for A View from the Bridge, while building a significant position in Australian cinema through Looking for Alibrandi and Lantana. In 2002, LaPaglia moved to a completely different role as Special Agent Jack Malone in Without a Trace. The series lasted 7 seasons and became one of the biggest milestones of his television career, also bringing him a Golden Globe. From a brother causing chaos in a sitcom, LaPaglia quickly became a familiar face in the American crime and drama genre. By 2026, Anthony LaPaglia is 67 years old and continues to work rather than just living on past successes. He remains active across film, television, and especially theater, where deep roles continue to attract him. In 2026, LaPaglia returns as Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman in Australia, a character completely removed from Simon Moon. Looking back at Frasier, Simon was just a humorous slice of his broad career, but it is precisely that difference that makes LaPaglia's then and now journey notable, from a comedic supporting character to a veteran actor with stage and drama as a long-term foundation. Trevor Einhorn truly grew up before the eyes of Frasier audiences. He was only 8 when he began regularly playing Frederick Crane in 1996, the son of Frasier and Lilith, who lived primarily with his mother in Boston. Every time Frederick came to Seattle, Frasier's image immediately changed. The man who could advise thousands of listeners became anxious before his own son, always wanting to prove he was a good father during the rare time they spent together. Einhorn appeared in 8 episodes from 1996 to 2003, letting the character grow up alongside him. Frederick was initially built as an intelligent boy clearly influenced by both Frasier and Lilith. But as he grew up, he began to have interests and choices that his father did not always understand. This gave the episodes with Frederick a different tone. The distance between father and son didn't come from lack of affection, but from not living together. Frasier wanted to take advantage of each visit to create perfect memories, but the more he tried to control everything, the more he realized that fatherhood cannot be solved by a few clever psychological tips.
Go get him, Dwight.
Wish us luck.
All done.
Unlike many child actors who leave the industry as adults, Trevor Einhorn continued to work. He appeared in The Office, then had an extended role in Mad Men as John Mathis. The next significant step forward came with The Magicians, where Einhorn played Josh Hoberman from 2016 to 2020 and became a more important member of the cast in later seasons. It was the role of Josh that helped a new generation of audiences know Einhorn without needing to have seen him as a child in Frasier Crane's apartment.
I was in a bad place.
Why didn't you reach out to me? I've always told you.
Playing. You flew out to...
When Frasier returned in 2023, Frederick became a central character once more, but Trevor Einhorn did not return. The role of the adult Freddy was given to Jack Cutmore Scott, marking a clear separation between the boy version of the old series and the man in the new story. Einhorn, meanwhile, continued acting, with recent appearances including Curb Your Enthusiasm and The Comic Shop. In 2026, he is 37 years old. Nearly 3 decades after first playing Frederick, the boy who once made Frasier worry about fatherhood has become a mature actor with his own entirely separate journey.
started out kind of as a smaller character and then they kept giving roles and, you know, elaborate meals and stuff like that. So I got to have a lot of fun.
Do you remember the times Frederick appeared and made Frasier face very different challenges of fatherhood? Please share your favorite moment or character from Frasier in the comments. If you enjoy stories looking back at familiar faces and their journeys after leaving the screen, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss future stories. Julia Wilcox appeared when Frasier was already in its final seasons, but she did not come to make things easier. As the new financial expert at KACL, Julia was intelligent, sharp, and not very concerned with making Frasier feel admired.
No, I can talk. Well, what kind of crap chicken?
No partridge. It's in a champagne and orange sauce.
'Cause he's a pissy little... That's...
Felicity Huffman gave the character a fairly cold and competitive energy, causing the clashes between them to quickly turn into attraction. However, the closer they got, the more Frasier realized that attraction does not mean the ability to build a sustainable relationship.
The second time I didn't work for a year, I gave up. I want to thank Duncan Tucker for seeing me in an off-Broadway play.
Julia was just a short chapter in Huffman's career. Immediately after Frasier, she took the role of Lynette Scavo in Desperate Housewives, the show that put Huffman's name in a completely different position. The role helped her win a Primetime Emmy, and she was nominated several times throughout the 8 seasons. Cinema also brought a major step forward with Transamerica in 2005, helping Huffman receive an Oscar nomination for Best Actress. In just a few years after Julia Wilcox, she had moved from a familiar television actress to one of the highly regarded faces of American television. But that career went through a difficult period in 2019 when Huffman was involved in the college admissions scandal in the U.S. She pleaded guilty publicly, took responsibility, and later completed her sentence along with obligations set by the court. Huffman temporarily stepped away from major roles for a while before gradually returning to the screen. Instead of trying to avoid the story, she later spoke directly about her decisions and the consequences they caused for her family and career. By 2026, Huffman is 63 years old, and the process of returning to the profession is clearer. She appeared in Criminal Minds Evolution, then participated in the second season of the medical drama Doc as Dr. Joan Ridley. The role was built for one season and ended in April 2026. For viewers of Frasier, Julia may have only been a short and volatile romance. For Huffman, it was situated right before the period that led her to major success, then a public crisis, and finally the journey back to the screen many years later. Martin Crane spent most of Frasier with memories of his deceased wife and relationships that didn't go all the way. Thus, Ronnie Lawrence appeared in season 11 with a different mission than the women before her. She opened up the possibility that Martin still had a new chapter. What made the situation more interesting was that Ronnie once babysat Frasier and Niles when they were little. Years later, she returned as a confident, humorous lounge singer and quickly found rapport with the father of the 2 boys from back then.
Hello? What? Oh, you're kidding. I guess, yeah. I'll see you in a bit.
Something wrong?
Oh, I have to go into work. I can't believe...
Wendy Malick did not try to turn Ronnie into an overly sentimental love story. She and Martin connected through experience, jokes, and a sense of comfort being together. While Frasier and Niles often analyzed love to the point of making things complicated, Martin and Ronnie showed that a relationship in adulthood can start more simply. By the final episode in 2004, they married, providing Martin with a hopeful ending just before each Crane family member began to move in their own direction. Ronnie arrived quite late to Frasier, but Wendy Malick was already a veteran television face by then. She had been prominent in Dream On, and especially Just Shoot Me, a role that brought her Emmy and Golden Globe nominations. After Frasier, Malick continued to appear densely on television, then reunited with Jane Leeves in Hot in Cleveland. In recent years, she has maintained a significant working pace, with Shrinking, where she plays Julie, who has a romantic relationship with Harrison Ford's character, along with The Chicken Sisters. In 2026, Wendy Malick is 75 years old and still active in front of the camera. But there is one role she does not want to return to, Ronnie. Malick once explained that appearing in the new Frasier would no longer feel right since John Mahoney, who played Martin, passed away in 2018. That decision keeps Ronnie's story at its best moment. The woman who came near the end of the series helped Martin find love again, then left the story with him on their wedding day. Before Seattle, there was Boston. And before Frasier's numerous romances, there was Lilith Sternin. Bebe Neuwirth first played this psychiatrist in Cheers, where a character initially intended to appear only briefly ended up becoming an important part of the show. Lilith married Frasier. They had a son, Frederick, and then separated, but the connection between them never completely disappeared. Neuwirth won 2 consecutive Emmys for the role of Lilith, turning calm, composure, precise voice, and dry humor into an unmistakable trademark. When Frasier moved to Seattle, Lilith did not go with him, and that was a suitable choice for Bebe Neuwirth in real life. She prioritized the stage over becoming a regular actor in the new series. Lilith thus appeared only occasionally, but every time she stepped into the room, Frasier almost immediately lost part of his usual confidence. Between them, there remained intellectual competition, old disagreements, and a bond that couldn't be cut because of Frederick. Lilith became one of the few characters who could understand Frasier so deeply that she made him both uncomfortable and unable to completely distance himself. While Lilith became a television icon, the stage was truly where Bebe Neuwirth built much of her professional legacy. She won Tonys for Sweet Charity in Chicago, while continuing to appear in film, with Jumanji and many other projects. Television later brought Madam Secretary, The Good Wife, The Good Fight, and Julia. When Frasier was revived in 2023, Neuwirth also returned as Lilith in one episode, allowing the audience to witness Frasier and his ex-wife continue their familiar banter after many decades. Even as a veteran actress, Neuwirth continues to return to Broadway. In the revival version of Cabaret that opened in 2024, she played Fräulein Schneider and received another Tony nomination before ending her run in March 2025. In 2026, she is 67 years old. More than 40 years since her stage career began to take off, Neuwirth can still move between Broadway and television, and Lilith is still the character who only needs to appear for a few minutes to remind the audience that Frasier never completely controlled his past. Not many sitcom characters exist across 3 stages like Lilith, Cheers, Frasier, and the revival version decades later. What keeps her alive is not the number of episodes she appeared in, but the special relationship with Frasier. They were once lovers, husband and wife, then became 2 divorced parents forced to understand each other. For Bebe Neuwirth, the character also reflects a rare career. She never had to choose permanently between stage and screen, but continuously returned to both when she found an attractive enough role. Donnie Douglas created an awkward problem for Frasier because he was truly a decent man. Initially appearing as Niles' divorce lawyer, Donnie quickly became close to Daphne and ultimately proposed to her. This put Niles in a painful situation. The woman he loved for many years was preparing to marry the very man who had helped him resolve his marriage with Maris. Saul Rubinek made Donnie relatable, humorous, and sincere enough that the audience couldn't simply view him as an obstacle to be removed. When Daphne finally realizes her feelings for Niles and leaves the wedding with Donnie, the story doesn't end on a completely happy ending. Donnie is hurt and reacts strongly to the sudden disappearance of the future he believed was secure. This very consequence helps the Niles-Daphne love story retain a touch of realism. The right choice for both of them can still cost a third party emotionally. Rubinek later stated that he would still be willing to reconsider if Donnie were included in a new version of Frasier, but that ultimately didn't happen. Saul Rubinek's real life began far from Hollywood. Born in 1948 in the Foreign-Walled refugee camp in Germany, he was the son of 2 Polish Jews who survived the Holocaust. When Rubinek was just 9 months old, his family moved to Canada. Years later, he not only became an actor, but also dedicated himself to documenting his parents' story, from the documentary So Many Miracles to writing projects about family memories. In 2026, that theme continues in All in the Telling, which combines memory, family, and history through a personal perspective. On screen, Rubinek built a career much wider than Donnie Douglas. He appeared in Unforgiven, True Romance, Warehouse 13, Hunters, Blackberry, and a host of other films, while also working as a director and screenwriter. Recently, at age 78, he appeared in the spy series The Copenhagen Test, released in late 2025, as Victor Simonek. Donnie was once the man left behind in one of Frasier's most famous romances, but Saul Rubinek never let that supporting role limit his professional path. Daphne often told stories about her family before the audience actually met them, and when Gertrude Moon finally appeared, viewers immediately understood why those stories sounded both unbelievable and completely plausible. Daphne's mother stepped into Seattle with a habit of complaining, interfering, and making her daughter feel responsible for all the family's problems. Millicent Martin turned Gertrude into a constant source of disruption, especially when she moved in near Daphne and Niles, bringing the tensions from Manchester directly into the new life her daughter was trying to build.
Killed. I'm doing a charity for him Sunday. He'll shoot me. No, I think the thing, great people to work together, you know, and that's what made the show so.
Gertrude could be exhausting to others, but the character also helped Daphne become more fully realized. Previously, the audience mostly knew the Moon family through comedic stories. When Gertrude and Simon appeared, that past became concrete. Daphne had grown up amidst strong personalities, family expectations, and a mother who frequently criticized her while easily overlooking many shortcomings of her sons. As a result, Daphne's patience and adaptability were no longer just cute character traits. They seemed like skills she had developed long before setting foot in Seattle. Millicent Martin had nearly half a century of performance before taking the role of Gertrude in 2000. In the UK, she became famous from the satire show That Was the Week That Was in the early 1960s and won a BAFTA. The stage took her from the West End to Broadway, where Side by Side by Sondheim and King of Hearts brought her 2 Tony nominations. Therefore, Daphne's noisy mother was actually played by an artist with a very long background in singing comedy and theater, explaining in part the ability to keep a very precise rhythm in scenes where Gertrude caused chaos.
With Julie Andrews, we were in the musical together, and I always want American, so I was able to move here.
That's a good excuse to move here.
After Frasier, Martin continued to appear on television rather than retiring completely. One of her notable later roles was Joan Margaret in Grace and Frankie, where she appeared several times from 2017 to 2022. By 2026, Millicent Martin is 92 years old. Compared to many colleagues on this list, she has lived more privately in recent years and no longer has a dense schedule of appearances. But a career spanning from 1950s British theater to 21st century streaming television has taken Martin through many eras of entertainment. Gertrude Moon was never created to be the most pleasant person in the Crane-Moon family. Her value lay in making Daphne's past tangible and ensuring that life after Daphne married Niles wasn't too perfect. And behind that character was Millicent Martin, an artist who once sang satire on British television, was nominated for a Tony on Broadway, and decades later could still turn an apartment in Frasier upside down with just a few lines of dialogue. With a supporting role that appeared quite late, Gertrude became a very unmistakable face in the final seasons. If you could choose one member of the Moon family to appear more, who would you choose? Please leave their name in the comments section. And if these reunions with the Frasier cast still make you want to know where they went after the show closed, please give a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell to continue the journey with us in future stories. At KACL, Noel Shemsky always seemed to be standing slightly off from the world around him. He loved science fiction communicated awkwardly and had a persistent affection for Roz. But what made Noel memorable was the sincerity beneath those awkward situations. Patrick Kerr did not turn the character into a simple joke. He let Noel carry the air of someone who just wanted to be recognized in an environment full of strong personalities. That acting style helped a minor character appearing sporadically throughout many seasons still have a unique mark in Frasier. Leaving KACL, Kerr continued down the path of an actor specializing in supporting roles with character. He appeared in Friends, Seinfeld, Will and Grace, ER, Law and Order, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and many other series. In Curb Your Enthusiasm, Kerr played Michael, a blind piano player who knew Larry David, continuing to employ the type of humor based on social misalignment that viewers once saw in Noel. His career is not based on a long-term lead role, but built from a series of small but recognizable characters. The stage also occupies a significant part of Patrick Kerr's journey. He appeared on Broadway in The Ritz You Can't Take It With You and the revival of Travesties in 2018. Interestingly, in Travesties, Kerr also stood on the same stage as Dan Butler, another colleague from Frasier. These roles show that behind Noel's fumbling air is an actor trained to move flexibly between television sitcoms and live theater, where every beat of dialogue must be very accurately controlled. By 2026, Patrick Kerr is 70 years old. One of his recent notable television jobs was the role of Mr. Johnson in Apple TV Plus's The Big Door Prize, appearing in both seasons airing from 2023 to 2024. Noel Shemsky was never the center of Frasier, but Patrick Kerr made the character distinct enough for viewers to still remember him decades later. The man obsessed with Star Trek amidst a radio station where everyone has their own obsession. Gil Chesterton did not merely evaluate a meal, he turned every remark into a performance. With elaborate pronunciation, theatrical style, and almost absolute confidence, KACL's food critic only needed to appear for a few minutes to change the rhythm of the room. Edward Hibbert understood that Gil would be funniest when the character was completely serious about himself. Instead of trying to grab laughs with noise, he relied on pauses, emphasis, and excessive formality to create a supporting character unmistakable for anyone else in Frasier.
And was a tormenting director. I'm writing a one-man show and I say I was the arrogant. Children were maimed with gardening tools if they showed up one.
Hibbert had a background very suitable for that style. Born in the US but raised in England, he was trained at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art before building a career in stage and television. After Gil became familiar, Hibbert continued to appear in The First Wives Club, The Prestige, Mary Poppins Returns, and many other projects. He also voiced Zazu in several works belonging to the Lion King franchise. Thus, although Gil was the role that helped many television viewers recognize him, Hibbert's career always extended far beyond the world of KACL. Few Frasier viewers know that Hibbert also has a second career. Behind the scenes, he is a literary agent. For many years, he simultaneously acted and represented authors including Chuck Palahniuk. The two seemingly different jobs share a common point. Both revolve around language and how a story is brought to the public. That makes Hibbert's journey quite different from many colleagues on this list. He He doesn't just stand in front of the camera, but also works at a completely different end of the publishing industry. More than 2 decades after the final episode in 2004, Gil was unexpectedly brought back. Edward Hibbert, along with Dan Butler, reappeared in the second season of the new Frasier version in 2024, when Frasier returns to visit KACL in Seattle. By August 2026, Hibbert is 70 years old. That reunion creates a beautiful circle for the character. The critic, who once turned every dinner into a major event, steps back into the old studio, still with the voice and style that makes viewers recognize Gil almost immediately. Kenny Daly was not the type of manager who made employees go silent when stepping into a room. On the contrary, he was often the person having to try to stay calm amidst Frasier Raw's bulldog and a host of strong personalities at KACL. Tom McGowan built Kenny with kindness, a bit of anxiety, and a feeling that he was always handling a problem larger than his ability to bear. That very normalcy made Kenny relatable. He didn't need to compete with Frasier or Bulldog for attention. Kenny's role was to keep the radio station running while everyone around him constantly created more trouble. Behind that image of a gentle manager was an actor with a very solid stage foundation. McGowan was trained at the Yale School of Drama and received a Tony nomination right from his Broadway debut in La Bête. Before and after Frasier, he appeared in many films, such as Sleepless in Seattle, The Birdcage, As Good as It Gets, and Ghost World. McGowan also continuously returned to Broadway, with Wicked, Casa Valentina, She Loves Me, and Kiss Me Kate, showing that the stage was always an important part of his career. In 2026, Tom McGowan is 67 years old and continues to appear on screen. In recent years, he has appeared in several series, including Dr. Odyssey. McGowan's journey is not based on a single role or a short period of fame. He has maintained his career by alternating between stage, film, and television for decades. Kenny Daly thus accurately reflects that professional style, not the person always standing in the center, but a face reliable enough to make the audience remember whenever they return to the world of KACL. Bulldog was almost the loudest noise at KACL. The sports radio host always entered with confidence, competitiveness, and an energy completely opposite to Frasier's elaborate analytical style. Dan Butler turned that contrast into one of the familiar comedic sources of the series. Bulldog could act strong and reckless, but sometimes overconfidence revealed insecurities behind it. Thanks to Butler, the character was not just a noisemaker at the radio station, but became one of the supporting faces most closely associated with the Seattle era of Frasier. Outside of Bulldog, Dan Butler's career went through many different colors. He appeared in Manhunter, The Silence of the Lambs, Roseanne, Enemy of the State, and Crazy Stupid Love. The stage also occupies a major place in his professional journey. Butler performed on Broadway and off-Broadway, wrote his own works, and participated in directing and producing. In 2018, he played the role of Lennon in the revival of Tom Stoppard's Travesties. These jobs show that behind a noisy Bulldog was an artist with a career far broader than the familiar sitcom image. A notable reunion took place in 2024 when Butler returned to the role of Bulldog in the second season of the new Frasier version. This appearance brought the character back to KACL after about 2 decades, while directly connecting the old Seattle world with Frasier's new life. By 2026, Dan Butler is 71 years old. Bulldog is still remembered for the noise and high-energy clashes, but Butler's journey was built on something completely different: the ability to change between many types of roles and continue to work without letting a single famous character limit him. There are characters who only need to appear for a few minutes for the entire atmosphere of Frasier to immediately change, and Bulldog definitely belongs to that group. What do you remember most about this character? The noise, the clashes with Frasier, or Dan Butler's own unique comedic touch? Tell us in the comments. If this video brought back beautiful memories of KACL in the cast of yesteryear, please hit like to support the channel. Subscribing and turning on the notification bell is also a simple way for you to continue meeting familiar faces in subsequent parts. Perhaps no object in Frasier said more about Martin Crane than the old chair placed in the middle of his son's luxurious apartment. Martin was a retired police officer who liked sports beer and simple things that Frasier and Niles often considered lacking in sophistication. But John Mahoney made that difference the soul of the Crane family. Behind the tough exterior was a father learning to get close to his two sons again after many years of distance. Martin didn't always say directly that he loved them. Feelings often appeared through small actions, jokes, and his steady presence. Mahoney's path to acting differed from many Hollywood colleagues. Born in the UK and moving to the US, he began his professional career quite late and found his artistic home at the Steppenwolf Theater Company in Chicago. Before Frasier, Mahoney had won a Tony for The House of Blue Leaves and appeared in films such as Moonstruck, Say Anything, and In the Line of Fire. After the sitcom ended in 2004, he didn't pursue a similar television role. Mahoney returned more to the stage while still participating in Treatment, Hot in Cleveland, and Flipped.
These memories are just not necessarily true. For the years and memories that you have of things that happened to you as
John Mahoney passed away on February 4, 2018 at the age of 77. Thus, Martin Crane's then and now journey carries a different tone than many other members. There is no Martin of 2026 stepping back onto the screen. Instead, the character exists in the memories of the Crane family and the viewers. When Frasier was revived, the absence of Martin further showed how important John Mahoney had once been. He turned a stubborn father into the emotional center of the show and turned the chair Frasier once hated into one of the most remembered images of that apartment. Roz Doyle entered the KACL studio with an advantage that very few people had. She was not at all overwhelmed by Frasier. When he became too confident or over-analytical, Roz often needed only a short sentence to pull him back to reality. Peri Gilpin turned that relationship into a friendship that endured throughout 11 seasons. Roz was both an excellent producer and had a private life full of independent choices. She dated, became Alice's mother, and grew in her career without losing the directness, humor, and confidence that made the character from the early seasons.
Kind of work together and do what he's asking them to do in their own individual cameras.
So, Kelsey, I can see him as a surfer dude. I guess he has a lot of different faces, but he...
After Frasier closed in 2004, Gilpin still maintained a steady presence on television. She appeared in Make It or Break It, Scorpion, Broad City, Why Women Kill, Kevin Can Fuck Himself, and many voice projects. Although no character has surpassed Roz in terms of recognition, Gilpin did not leave the industry but chose a stable path through many genres. Outside of work, she built a family life with her husband, Christian Vincent, and two twin daughters, keeping much of her private life away from constant media attention. Nearly 20 years later, Roz appeared before Frasier again. Gilpin returned at the end of the first season of the revival version and continued to have several more appearances in the second season. By 2026, she is 65 years old. What makes this return notable is that Roz does not feel like a character brought in just to evoke nostalgia. She is still confident enough to banter with Frasier like in the old days. From KACL's young producer to the friend reappearing after many decades, Roz is evidence of one of the most enduring relationships of the entire series. Niles Crane could correct a small detail on a table and immediately afterwards cause the whole room to descend into chaos because of his own anxiety. That combination of sophistication and insecurity became a great gift for David Hyde Pierce, who turned Niles into one of the standout characters of Frasier. Initially, he might look like a more fastidious version of Frasier, but the long romance with Daphne and the competitive yet deep relationship with his brother helped Niles develop into an independent character. Pierce was particularly prominent in physical comedy and won 4 Primetime Emmys for the role. When the series ended, Pierce did not seek another sitcom to replace Niles. He shifted much of his attention to the stage, which became an important next chapter of his career. In 2007, Pierce won a Tony for Curtains and subsequently continued to appear in many Broadway works. On television, he played the role of Paul Child in Julia, showing the ability to shift to more restrained and mature characters. By 2025, Pierce returned to Broadway with Pirates, the Penzance musical, continuing to maintain his long-term connection with the stage after the period of resounding success with Frasier.
Which is about the writing more than anything else, that the writing was so good, and also specific events of the period.
Right.
So
it's not really dated.
No, you get used to the clothes.
When Frasier was revived in 2023, David Hyde Pierce decided not to return to the role of Niles. Instead of trying to recreate a character that had a complete ending, he chose to continue with other projects. In 2026, Pierce is 67 years old and remains tied to the stage. A project, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, has also been announced for 2027. Niles thus exists primarily through memories of the original series, Daphne, and their son, David. That's a fairly special then and now direction. The character doesn't return, but the actor behind him continues to move forward. Few sitcom characters have a life on screen as long as Frasier Crane. Kelsey Grammer began playing this psychiatrist in Cheers in 1984. Initially, Frasier was just a part of the story in Boston. 9 years later, he was given an entire series of his own and moved to Seattle. From there, a supporting character became the center of 11 television seasons. Grammer turned Frasier into a strange blend of intelligence and lack of self-awareness, a person who could solve strangers' problems on the radio, but still frequently made his own life a mess. That success brought Grammer 4 Primetime Emmys for the lead role in Frasier, alongside a host of other nominations and awards. But he did not stop at sitcoms. His distinctive voice helped Grammer create Sideshow Bob in The Simpsons, another role that brought an Emmy. Cinema took him to X-Men: The Last Stand and The Expendables 3, while Broadway brought a Tony nomination for La Cage aux Folles. One character may have defined Grammer's name, but over many years he still continuously tested himself in entirely different directions. Behind that career was a life that experienced many family losses. Grammer lost his father when young, lost his sister Karen in 1975, and subsequently lost 2 half-brothers in an offshore accident. In 2025, he published Karen, A Brother Remembers, looking back at his sister and the long-term impact of that loss on his life. Grammer said that the process of writing helped him look at sadness in a different way after many decades. It is precisely those real-life experiences that make the journey behind the humorous Frasier image on screen have a depth few viewers realize. In 2023, nearly 2 decades after the final episode in Seattle, Grammer decided to return as Frasier. The character at this point returns to Boston, trying to rebuild the relationship with his son Freddie and entering a new phase of life. The revival version lasted 2 seasons on Paramount Plus before the service decided not to continue with a third. CBS Studios subsequently sought another home for the project. Roz, Lilith, Bulldog, and Gil all reappeared, while Niles and Daphne were absent, and Martin only existed through memory. At age 71 in 2026, Kelsey Grammer still works regularly. He appeared in a role completely different from Frasier in the 2nd season of The Hunting Party, while also continuing with film and television projects. By this time, Grammer has lived with Frasier Crane for over 4 decades, from the psychiatrist stepping into a bar in Boston to the radio host in Seattle, and then back to Boston as an older man. Not many actors get to witness a character age almost in parallel with themselves.
It's a great sense of occasion here. It's a celebration of the city and our cooperation. Fantastic. Michael Bay is a brilliant director,
And that is perhaps the reason Frasier remains the center of this entire story. Apartments change, friends grow old, some familiar faces are no longer there, but the character continues to find ways to start over. For Grammer, Frasier was not just the most successful role of his career, it became a timeline running through much of his professional life. A character continuously returning to ask the same question, after all that has been through, is a human still capable of change? The greatest value of the journey looking back at Frasier lies not in seeing how the actors' appearances have changed, but in understanding what happened after the studio lights went out. Each person moved forward in a different direction. Some achieved major additional milestones, some returned to the stage, some chose a more private life, and some faces remain only in memory. Through that, Frasier reminds us that behind a beloved character is always a real person with a career, choices, losses, and chapters of life still being written. From the early years of Frasier to 2026, every name in Frasier has gone in its own direction. But just by looking back at those familiar faces, an entire era of television seems to come alive. Among the actors we just met, again, who surprised you the most seeing them today? Please leave the character name and the memory you remember most in the comments. If you want to continue exploring those classic casts then and now, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. See you in the next reunion.